so graced us with his time about 6 months ago. It was a similar presentation, but I really feel like, especially now when we have to build powerful conversations about our value and such, that having a elevated understanding of the market and market condition and the market we're moving into in a based on statistical fact is more important than ever, right? And so we're really, really excited to have Oscar here again, and we will continue to have him as much as he allows us. Additionally, we as we talked about the last few weeks, Rich Paisani, our broker of record, has moved on to a desert opportunity. And we were lucky enough to get someone to replace him of equal or greater stature, right? The Jeff Curtis, who in the process of introducing, is been in the business for how long, Jeff? This is Jeff Curtis, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, since 2002.
2002. And Jeff will give us a little bit of his background. He has a very unique background, but has been an agent, a brokerage owner, a broker of record. What else am I missing? Oh, property management company, and
That's enough. Yeah.
That's enough. and Jeff is a servant leader, right? He was saying he had 4 agent calls already this morning, and some of you have already talked to him, and so we are really, really lucky to have Jeff, and I'd like you all to welcome Jeff to our little family here.
Well, thanks, Joe. I appreciate it. I'm not going to take too much time because we want to give Oscar as much time as possible. He has much more important things to say than I do. But I'm currently broker at 3 other Keller Williams offices and have been in broker roles for about 15 years at one office to the other, but I don't change around a lot. It's mostly the same offices. I pride myself on trying to train you guys as much as I can. I do a weekly training class every Wednesday. Samantha will be getting the links to that so you can log in on Zoom. And there's a whole library of past training on there, including a lot of training very, very recently on all the new forms we're going to have to be dealing with to handle the NAR settlement. So I highly encourage you to sit in on those sessions. If you have questions that you need answered, you have emergency situations, Samantha will be getting you contact information. I think Joey likes to have things come to him first, if I remember right.
Doesn't have to. Well, the way I see it is, there's Peter Haven, our lawyer, there's myself, and there's you.
Right.
And we work as kind of a team. Some people use me as an entry point. Some people will use you as an entry point. Some people use Peter as an entry point.
Yeah.
And and I redirect. You can redirect. It's a collaborative. It's a really collaborative conversation for the most part.
But I'm available, and I do pick up the phone, so you can call or text. And once I know who you are, I put you in the phone, so when it rings, it's so and so from Larchmont. A lot of times, I get a number I don't know, I'll let go to the voicemail and then call back. So if the first call goes that way, don't feel bad. In terms of background, before I was in real estate, I was in the high-tech industry for 20 years and was vice president of marketing and sales for a couple of public companies. So I have a lot of background in negotiating. I have a lot of background in contracts, which is how I got the broker gig in the first place. I have a lot of roots in the area. You guys ever see the kind of ugly yellow apartment building on the corner of Beverly and Rossmore? My grandparents managed that building for 15 years. So I've been in this area probably longer than anyone in the room. Maybe Andrew. We can, we We can have an Olaf battle of the old guys. But I'm happy to help you. I look forward to working with you guys, and good selling. Okay.
Great, thanks, Jeff. More to come with Jeff. And that's the only moving right on the Oscar, right? Yeah. All right. So, if any of you do not know Oscar, I will go through it again. Oscar is the Deputy Chief Economist. Come on, Oscar. You don't have to, there's no pretense anymore. You've been here enough, right? And Oscar's going to go through around a 45-minute presentation with a bunch of slides, and traditionally you share those slides after, right? Yes, absolutely. Oh my, look at all that. There you go. And so, Oscar, you want to, while Samantha's loading up your slides here, you can tell everybody about yourself a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you, Joey, for the introduction. And I brought this with me. You gave me this last time because I did a pointer. I had a tough time actually pointing last time.
Prize possession.
I have it here, and I continue to use it actually throughout all the presentations that I've done so far. But thank you for having me back. And of course, it's been what, 6 months or so?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been about 6 months, and I know last time was here in February. It was the beginning of the year, sort of the beginning of the year, and things got started. And I think I mentioned last time that things are going to get started. Things are going to get better throughout the year. And here's what I said actually last time.
Sometimes you guys.
Yeah, I got it. I brought this up because I brought this with me because I want everyone to be reminded that I actually was wrong a little bit too. That was February, and I said the economy first. I always talk about the economy first, and I will talk more about the economy for the first 10, 15 minutes because a lot of things happened in the last maybe a week, 2 weeks or so. Some good, some bad. But I want to remind everyone that the economy at the beginning of last year, I said, well, it's going to continue to improve. It's going to grow, and we projected the economy actually in 2024 to increase by 0.7%. I expect that number to be actually a little bit better now. I have a slide right after that, and I'll show you those numbers. And I said, the unemployment number. I guess a lot of focus has been on the job market in the last few days, last couple of weeks or so. I said the national unemployment number will go down. Will stay at around 4.4% for the average for the year. And then I said, of course, inflation. Inflation is very important to understand for everyone because it affects interest rates, right? Inflation, I said, it's going to continue to cool off in the next 12 months. And the CPI number, the Consumer Price Index, is going to reach or average about 2.6% in 2024. And how's that going to affect the market? Back then, I said, we're going to average in 6.3% for the year fixed rate, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Of course, I was probably a little bit more optimistic back then. It started coming down, but then it started going back up in. And I said, in last year it was 2023 was 6.8%. Now I still believe that it's going to go down this year, but probably not as much. The sales, and I said it's going to be up by about 27%. I still believe it's going to be up, but it's going to be a little more moderate. So going to be a double-digit increase, I believe. Now I have to be honest, for the first half of the year, the first 6 months, it actually comes down slightly to the state sale instead of going up. So I'm relying on the second half of the year.
Yes. These are all California. The numbers are based on all California.
Absolutely, yes. These numbers are all California numbers. Later on, and maybe that half, maybe about 20 minutes from now, I'll probably go over some county number as well as some city level number. Thanks for pointing that out. And then of course, prices. Prices seem to be, if you look at the median price, if you look at the price right in the middle, it seems to be actually improving across the state. And the median price actually increased. At the beginning of the year, I said about 6%. Probably will be a little bit higher than that. And supply is very important as well. Supply, I mentioned that it's going to increase about 10 to 20% this year. And I think that actually is quite on point so far this year for the state. Now let's take a look at August 2024, the number that the new bullet point that I actually put up here. It's a little different, slightly different, but not too, well, some of them are a little bit far off. Now, if you look at the economy, right now the economy seems to be actually doing a little bit better. We believe that the economy actually will increase by about 2%, despite the fact that, of course, the last couple of weeks, we've been hearing things about, okay, well, the economy, could it possibly be going into recessions? I'll talk about that maybe in the first 10, 15 minutes or so. Of course, a lot of attention has been paid to, the unemployment rate or the labor market. The unemployment rate, the last number was 4.3%. The 4.3% actually, if you look at how it compares to the historical number, is really not that bad. But of course, it's a jump. And there has been some discussions about, you probably heard, the terms that everyone is getting familiar with now about, the Song Group. That's something, I'll talk a little bit about that, but maybe not go into too much detail. I still believe that it is going to reach, on average, a 4% in 2024 and a 4.3% in 2025. Now, that's the average. Now, at the end of the year, it might actually go up a little bit higher than 4%, but the average for the year is going to be about 4%. And the inflation, now that's actually a miss. I believe that it's going to be down compared to last year, but it's going to be a little bit higher than the 2.6% that I mentioned earlier, or 6 months ago. It's going to be about 3%, but then it's going to go down to 2.4% in 2025. And how's the market? The market, now I said, you saw it earlier, I said it's going to average 6.3% 6 months ago. It's going to be a little bit higher than that, 6.7%, still a little bit below last year's level of 6.8, but next year it's going to go down to 5.6%, and it's going to affect sales and price. Sales is going to be about 13% increase for this year, and price is going to be up about 7.4% this year. Like I said, I'm still keeping the 10 to 20% increase in supply this year. I think we have been seeing somewhere around 15 to 20% for the state, at least so far this year. And it varies between different price points. So let's take a look at some of the additional details. Got it, thank you. Should be fine. So let's take a look at some of the additional detail. Now, I added some slides in the last, I think we're good, right, for now. I added some additional slides in the last night, a couple of days, last week or so, a lot of things happened. People panicked. Last week, or actually the last 2 days, not including today, I don't know how it's going to work out today, but the stock market actually had some fluctuation starting on Thursday, Friday, and then yesterday. All right, come on. We had a global market stock sell-off, I think starting on Friday. It dropped pretty significantly. It started in Japan. The Nikkei's 225, the Nikkei's index actually dropped 12.4%. This one is very handy. 12.4% on Friday. Significant drop. And then, of course, following the Japan's market, NASDAQ and the S&P on Friday also dropped about 3.4% and 3% on Friday. And then yesterday, it actually had a little bit of a bounce back. Now, take a look at the dive. Now, this is like a cumulative price changes over the last maybe about 6 months or since the beginning of the year. It dropped quite significantly for the Japanese stock market. So it created some panic. But yesterday, if you look at yesterday's number, things actually bounced back slightly, especially for Japan. It actually bounced back by about 10% for the stock market. For S&P, 1% yesterday, and then today it actually went up for NASDAQ. NASDAQ yesterday went up 1%. Now we're still down. Today, I think we're down slightly right now, maybe about 0.2, 0.3% right now. By the end of the day, maybe in a couple hours, we might actually have, a slight decline also. Okay. Now, thank you. Now, let's take a look at, the volatility index. When you look at, the market fluctuated a lot Usually it is because there's a lot of volatility. This is the volatility index for the US stock market. You can see going back all the way to September of last year, it's been actually pretty tame. And then yesterday or a couple of days ago, it spiked up to a significant number. Very, very sharp, but then it came back down. It started coming down. I think today we started seeing that number continue to come down a little bit, maybe by about 15%-ish or so. So I think things are sort of stabilizing, but I wouldn't rule out the fact that it's going to continue to fluctuate. Now, what happened? What actually triggered all those, fluctuations? Well, it's really because of a couple of things. In the case of Japan, it was because they raised, their interest rate a little bit. But let's forget about Japan for a minute. Let's talk about what happened in the U.S. market. I'm fast forwarded a little bit, but I'll talk more about the Federal Reserve, rate cuts later on. But of course, Wednesday of last week, we got some good news. We got some news. I shouldn't say good news. We got some news that the Federal Reserve, they're holding rate for now, but then they most likely will probably cut rate in September. Now, the market didn't react very violently. The day on that day, Thursday actually started showing a little bit of volatility, but Friday, that's when we saw a lot of decline in stock market. And the reason why that happens is because Friday there was a report that just got released on Friday. It says it's the job creation report for July. It came down, or it's still growing, but it came in at 114,000. Now, what is 114,000? Now, if you take a look at how it compares to, say, the last couple years, last 18 months or so, we have been always at somewhere around 180,000, 200,000 or so. But for jobs to actually come down to 114,000 from the prior month, it was 175, it was a little surprise. The surprise was because a lot of economists expected the number to be somewhere around 170,000, 175,000. Now, if it is at that level, people probably would not react so violently in the stock market. People thought, okay, well, 114,000. Even though it's still a job growth, we're actually seeing some slowdown. Does that mean that we are going into a recession? Now, the momentum might suggest that we might be going into a recession. Now, what I mentioned earlier, there is an economist who put out a rule that says if that's the sum through that I mentioned earlier, if the 3-month average, you look at the 3-month average of the unemployment rate, if it is 50 basis point or 50.5% higher than the recent low was, I think, about a year ago at 3.4, 3.5%. Now, if we have that 3-month average about 50 basis point higher, that suggests that we might actually be going into a recession. Well, the exact theory was we are possibly in a recession. Now, people look at that number, 4.3 minus 3.4, that's absolutely higher than 50 basis point. So people were concerned. Are we going into recessions? Now, if we are going into recessions, then it's going to cost the economy. Of course, it's going to lead to other people, other countries, going down as well as far as the economy is concerned. Let's take a look. Let's step back a little bit. Let's take a look. Are we in a recession right now? You believe we're in a recession right now? Now, it really depends on what you look at, how you look at it. But let's just look at some numbers. In the past, when that same rule applies, in 1990, in 2001, and 2008, when that phenomenon occurs, take a look at what happens. Look at the payroll number, look at the income number, look at the industrial production number for those last three recessions, 1990, 2001, and 2008. They were all negative. What about now? We had that same phenomenon that happened. Everything else positive. Payroll is still positive. Income growth is still positive. And industrial production is still positive. So we're not in recessions in that sense. Are we going into one? That's the question. Are we moving in the directions? Are we going into the directions of in a recession? Well, that's hard to say. And let's take a look. there's some additional information that was released on Friday that prompted me to think, well, maybe let's hold off. Let's hold off on the labor market stuff. The labor market is still growing at 110, 115%, 115,000. It is slowing down. There's no doubt about it. Things are slowing down, but does it warrant a recession? Let's take a look at what happened with some numbers that was also released on Friday about the service sectors. Service sectors include maybe restaurants and for traveling. So the service sector, I know these numbers look very volatile, but take a look at the red line right here. This is the ISM employment index. This is about the service sector's employment. Now, anytime it's below 50, that suggests that things are actually could be in a recession mode. It did dip below 50, but it started bouncing back. Now, this is just one data point. We'll have to see how it goes next month and so on and so forth. But if you believe this trend, it does look like that things are actually softening, but it's actually bouncing back at least for 1 month. If you look at the service sector activity, not the employment, it also is about 50, and it's actually bounced back also. Now, is the economy definitely slowing down? Yeah, I think so. We are going to see the economy slowing down.
Was that the objective, to slow down the economy?
Yes, the soft landing. Now, of course, there's just a fine line between soft landing and hard landing. Soft landing is if you don't have a recession, if everything is positive as far as economic growth is concerned, even though it's just a 0.1% increase, that is still a soft landing. Now, if it is a negative 0.1% for 2 consecutive quarters, that could be considered a hard landing. Now, if you look at those differences, it's only a 0.2%. It's very, very small. So I don't think we need to worry too much. I think 6 months ago I did mention, I do believe personally that we are going to see at least 1 quarter of negative growth. May not necessarily be a recession, but we do see a negative growth, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a recession. I think we are going to see some slowdown for sure.
That will help with a decrease in the lending rate. Yeah.
Absolutely, and we actually have been seeing some numbers, and I'll go over those numbers very shortly. Now, if you look at just the second quarter, that was just released maybe about a few weeks ago, a month ago. The second quarter number for April and June, it actually suggests that we are actually increasing to 2.8%. Now, a year, maybe 3 quarters ago, we were actually increasing about 5%. It dipped to maybe about 3.4. Then the first quarter, it came down to 1.4. We expected things to actually slow down, but then the second quarter actually bounced back up. So the second quarter actually was decent. I put some bullet point up here. I don't necessarily have to go through everything, but just to summarize, yes, we have a better second quarter, which is good, and that's because of consumer spending. Now, consumers are actually spending a little bit, maybe on Prime, and I will talk a little bit about Prime. And investments are spending. Also, businesses are spending because you can see the fixed investment, 3.6%. Now, something that's missing though, they're spending on equipment. They're spending on AI, maybe intellectual property. I don't know whether. I mean, everyone talks about AI now. Whether they're really spending on AI, I'm not sure. But something that you probably noticed as well, you might have seen, early part of the year, we have more new home sales, we have developers building homes. But then they kind of put a pause on it in the last couple months because they have been concerned about whether the demand is actually coming in because of higher rates. So things actually slowed down a little bit. Now, government expenditure actually increased also. And I think overall, we are seeing some improvement in the second quarter. The question is the third quarter. Now, let's look at, before we talk about the third quarter, let's look at June's number. That's the latest month in that second quarter. Does it show actually an increase? If you look at the retail sales number, just how much people spend in June, the number actually is pretty flat compared to the month before that. That means, yes, we are seeing some slowdown. If you actually take out the inflation number, real retail sales continue to increase by 0.3%. It really depends on what people are spending though. Now, are people spending on goods or are people spending on in the service sectors? I think we have a lot of people who continue to go out and eat, myself included. We enjoy eating. We do, we go out and spend money. So I think we do have some retail sales. And here's the Prime Day event numbers. Any of you spent a couple weeks ago on buying on Amazon? Maybe on things that you don't necessarily need, awesome. And you put them in your garage or whatever, and you start looking at it. I have some stuff that I bought. I thought it's a good deal, and that was 2 years ago. It's sitting in my garage. We just like the scam, right? We love, promotion, even though they might have hiked up the price a long time ago, like before the Prime Day. We still consider those deals. But take a look. These are numbers from Amazon. Now, these are not necessarily just Amazon revenues. These are Prime Day event spending. It could be any online spending, because it's not just Amazon. Other people might have pushed their deals out the same day also. But if you take a look at these numbers, they actually increase year over year. And this year, it actually increased by about 11%. So we continue to buy in July. Now, how are we going to pay for it? I don't know. But we continue to buy 11%. And this is the number. These are the numbers that I mentioned. Even though we're buying, from Amazon on retail stuff, but it's stuff that home sales, furnishing, and building materials that actually have been declining. You've seen some decline. It's actually a small decline, but it's still a very small decline. So that means the big ticket item, we may not be actually spending as much. Now that actually could affect our overall sales. The question is whether that is going to continue. Now, I mentioned earlier, and I'll show you those numbers, interest rates start coming down. So that, I think in the second half of the year or in the next few months, we probably will start seeing some changes. But let's take a look at, before we get to home sales and housing market, let's take a look at some of the other indicators. 6 months ago, I think I focused more on inflation. How's inflation now? Are we seeing an improvement in inflation? Now, if you look at how things were way back at the beginning of January in 2023 or mid of 2022, we were at some point, the inflation number was 9%, I think I mentioned that, and then it started declining. It actually started coming down. The headline number, which is that blue line right here, actually dropped to 3%. 3% is actually not too bad. Pre-pandemic level, we were like a little bit below 3%. We are trying to get to 2%. If we want to follow what the Fed suggests, we want to get to 2%, and that has a lot to do with wages too. Wages at one point it was increasing by about 6.8%. The red line right here, it actually started coming down to about 3.6%. So it's encouraging in the sense that not necessarily for all employees, but in the sense that the cost of doing business for businesses might actually have come down to 3.6 to 3.6%. But take a look at the average weekly earning. It also has come down to 3.3%. Now, inflation started slowing down a little bit, so that's good. I think for the next, to be honest, for the next few months or so, we may not actually be focusing too much on inflation. If we don't see the number flaring up, the focus will probably be shifting to whether we are going into a recession or not. That's probably what we will be focusing on, at least from the economist's perspective. And you probably start noticing, yes, inflation is an issue. I think I have it. Inflation was an issue. It will continue to probably go up to maybe about 2.5% to 3%, but it should come down. I showed you these numbers last time, I think. These are UCLA's numbers. These are UCLA. The blue bars are actual numbers, and the red bars are UCLA's predictions. Now, UCLA's tend to be a little bit more optimistic than many economists. They expect in 2025, we will be below 2% as far as the headline numbers are concerned. I think it's going to be around 2%, maybe about 2.1, 2.2%. Now, if you believe in UCLA's Anderson forecast, then we should be fine. There shouldn't be any inflation in the next couple of years. in the next year or so. Now, you don't necessarily have to just look at UCLA's number. You can start looking at whether businesses are actually doing okay. Now, we indulge ourselves. I think all of us probably go to fast foods, McDonald's, every now and then, right? Now, if we don't, you'll probably also notice though that the $5 meal deal or whatever, they're coming back out. A while back, maybe a year ago, there was no mention of a $5 meal deal. It started coming out. Now, forget about how big, the size of the meal deal is. That's another discussion of shrinkflation. But they started coming back because they wanted to increase traffic. So we know that businesses want to come back. Businesses want people to come back. Consumers, they were very confident before, but they started wobbling a little bit. I think in the last couple months, consumers' confidence started actually stabilizing at around this number, about 100. Started bouncing back and forth because of concern about whether they're going to continue to have jobs, because there are indeed some issues about the labor market. People are concerned about job growth. But they take back up next month. I'm not sure, they probably will come back down, but probably not by a whole lot. Business leaders, CEOs, this was pulled in May or June. So at that time, we actually did not have the fluctuation in the financial market. But the CEO confidence, these are multi-nation corporate CEOs. Their confidence level actually kind of ticked up a little bit, at least from 2022, and then stay flat for the last couple of quarters. And the reason why they're probably less or a little bit more confident is because take a look at the number. The number of people who believe in the next 12 to 18 months that we're going to go into a recession, it dropped from 69% to 33%. So at least 2 months ago, they thought, no, we're not going into a recession, or many of them. What happened when they don't believe that we're going into recessions? They start spending, they stop stop laying people off. So hopefully that is the case. Now, I mentioned those are multinational corporate CEOs. There are some small business owners' confidence as well. That actually came down a little bit. So keep that in mind, because small business owners actually make up a big part of our economy. So these are the numbers that I showed you earlier in bullet points. As far as the economy is concerned, we actually will be growing a little faster in 2024, but slow down to 20.8% in 2025. And as far as inflation is concerned, going to stay at 3%, but then it's going to drop to 2.4%. That's our new predictions, 2.4%. Now, in between, there will be some quarters that I believe that we could actually see a negative, like I said. Whether, again, it is going to go into recessions, that's really hard to say. Now, for California, it's actually not growing as fast as far as the economy is concerned, but we're still growing in terms of job growth. Very small job growth, but we're still growing. As far as unemployment is concerned, we're inching up. From 2024 to 2025, it's going to inch up to 5.5%. Now, a lot of jobs are in the tech industry. We might actually see a little bit of a tick up in AI employment. And take a look at these numbers. I want to point this out. California population has been declining, actually, even though it's flat here, actually has been declining until 2023. 2023 actually starts increasing a little bit. So this year, next year, and the year after that, we probably will continue to increase, but by a very small margin. That, in a sense, in a way, shows that people are not leaving California anymore. We did have remote working. We continue to have more people. We continue to have people working remotely, but probably not as much as before. Which it's still, when I say not as much as before, not as much as when we were during the pandemic, but almost 30% people work from home now instead of working in the office. It's very different compared to maybe about 10-15% before the pandemic. Let's talk about the state market. We can talk about the county and the city level data in a minute after that. Now, I mentioned earlier, yes, for the first half of the year, for the first 6 months, and I only have 6 months of data. This July number will be coming out probably in about 2 weeks or so. But look at the year-to-date number, the first 6 months, we were down actually 0.5%. I was hoping that it would be a little bit higher, but because of interest rates being a little high, we actually we were not able to actually get a positive number. In June, in fact, we actually dropped close to 3%. June actually was not great. Now, the number that I think I mentioned before, pre-pandemic, the average is probably somewhere around 400. So we're still down quite a bit. But as far as price is concerned, we continue to increase in price, 7.5% as far as the statewide median price. And unsold inventory or months of inventory actually continue to improve. Now, the median price, I want to be cautious. I want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. I have a slide later on that part of the change in the median price is because of change in the mix of sales. We have more high-end home being sold compared to the lower, compared to the more affordable segment. So that actually pulled up the median price a little bit.
Is that sale price or list price?
This is sales price, sold price. I do have a list price versus sold price and a slide coming up. Now, at the beginning of the year, we were actually growing. It might be easier to use this slide. We were growing by 6% at the beginning of the year, and then 1.3%. But we started fluctuating a little bit because of interest rate. That's why for the 6 months, we're actually down 5%. I mentioned earlier, the higher segments actually have been doing a bit better. June, actually, even the higher segments started coming down a little bit, except for the 2 million plus. But I do believe that in August, we're going to, or in July, when we have the close sales number for July, we'll probably see a little bit of a change.
And when you say higher segment, you mean 2 million and above?
Depending on what area. So, in LA, we have a median price of 900 or a million. So it's not really high, really high for LA. But for, let's say, Riverside, San Bernardino, it might be a little high. So it really depends. I'm using this at the state level, so it's a little hard to gauge. But just keep in mind, depending on which area. Now for LA County, for let's say Culver City, for LA, City of LA, we're probably looking at high, meaning the top 20 percentile, which probably is 2 million and above. And that's single family home, not including condo. And that pulls up the median price a little bit. But I think we were going to see a little bit more improvement in the more affordable segment. Now, I want to show you this slide. It shows you the change in the mix of sales. Here are the numbers. The more affordable, or 500 and below, and actually decline in terms of sales shares. It used to be more like 40%, 45%, but then it has come down to about 22%. And as far as the $1 million plus, has gone up to about 36%. It used to be about 18%. So things might actually have, of course, we're talking about a time frame of about 5 years. But even if you take a look at what happened in the last 2 years or so, we are seeing a little bit more $1 million plus, maybe because of increase in price, maybe because of the households with a little bit more income, they're probably less affected by interest rates, maybe because of all cash sales, also because they might have a little bit more equity in the stock market. That was before the last dip, of course. Second half of the year, it probably will not grow as fast as far as the stock market is concerned. This is the price number, as I mentioned, it has gone up by 7.5%. We actually set a new median price for record median price for California. It's gone up to 906,000, I believe. Now, I want to talk a little bit about lock-in effect. I think last meeting, I talked about the lock-in effect. You guys know what the lock-in effect is? Lock-in effect is basically, you probably know, it's just terminology, it's a little different. They call it lock-in effect or mortgage prisoner, however you want to call it. Basically, of course, a lot of people refinance at 3%. Now they are homeowners. and the current interest rate is at 6%, 6.5%. If they were to actually put the house up on the market, they actually will lose out. Now, how much? I'll talk about that in a minute. Someone actually did a study. I don't remember which school. I think it's just a Federal Housing Finance Agency. They did a study on what the lock-in effect would have an impact on the market. As far as price is concerned, now, of course, if you lock in your rate, people don't put their house up on the market. Obviously, that leads to fewer homes in the market. That leads to this lock-in impact line. That actually will push the price up a little bit because of lack of supply by maybe about 6 or 7%. At the same time, when you have high rates, of course, people cannot pay as much. So that has a negative impact on price. When you actually combine the two effects, the green line right here shows at least you have about 3-4% just based on lock-in effect in terms of price. So it actually pushed home prices up a little bit. Now, over the last 4 years or so, you can see, over the last 23 years or so, you can see, for the most part, if you look at the start line right here, the start line is rates on new loans, prevailing interest rate. The gray line right here, that's the interest rates on existing mortgages, outstanding mortgages. For the most part, for the last 20-some years, you most of the time you have mortgages about existing mortgages rate about the new rate. That's not a surprise because if people have mortgages, outstanding mortgage, if there is a if the rates actually come down, they'll refinance, right? So for the last 20 years or so, you don't see a lot of time when first mortgage or new mortgages exceeding existing mortgages, except maybe the last few years, last couple of years. Take a look at the difference. It's a 320 basis point difference. That's the reason why people have not been actually putting their house up on the market. And about 80% of all the outstanding mortgages have rates of 200 basis point more than the current loan level or rate level. Now, what does that really mean? Take a look at it. These are national numbers. At the national level, the study shows for the last 7 quarters, ending in 2003, we potentially lost about 1.33 million sales. California makes up probably about 10 to 15% of these sales. We lost quite a bit in California. 15% means we probably lost about 200,000 home sales, potential home sales. That's a whole lot. Now, there's a note that I didn't include here. The reason why people actually don't put their house up on the market, as I mentioned, is because they felt like, if I put the house up on the market and buy a new home, buy another home, I'll lose out because I have to get a higher rate. Someone quantify those numbers. On average, a typical homeowner, if they were to actually put the house up on the market, they lose about $50,000, or maybe about $500-600 a month on mortgage payment. So that's the reason why. Now, let me go back. Now, I just need to actually, I need to go back one.
Oh, yeah, this doesn't really do that. There you go.
That works? Okay, thank you. Now, I do believe that there will be a little bit more help on its way. First, the supply side. I said the lock-in effect affects the supply side. We have been seeing, if you look at these numbers, we actually have been seeing increase in active listings, new active listings, by about 18.3% in the last month or so. So for the last few months, we actually have been increasing on a double-digit level. It's not just because of a pullback in demand, because these are new active listings. If you look at another study by Intercontinental Exchange, they look at the mortgages. I said earlier, about 80% with 200 basis point higher than the current existing rate, right? Take a look at the number here. I know it's a little hard to look at everything, but based on this chart here, it looks like as far as the rate distribution is concerned, we actually have more We actually have more loans now compared to, let's say, 9 months ago, that actually have higher rates, higher than 5%. So that suggests to me that more people actually could be willing to put their house on the market, let's say if it goes down to close to 6% or so. So the supply will continue to improve. Now let's take a look at some local statistics. I know you guys have more local statistics than I do, but I want to show you some statistics at the county level as well as some of the regional numbers. And I would point to you, I think I mentioned it last time, but I'll mention it again, where to get some of those city statistics. First, for the county, for the Southern California as a whole, similar to the state, we're actually down about 1.2% as far as sales is concerned. Price-wise, also about similar to the state, about 7.4%, higher than what we recorded a year ago. And unsold inventory also at 3.1 months. And as far as individual county is concerned, I highlighted LA County, but I also show the other county in Southern California. We're still down. LA County, as far as county is concerned, we're still down about 3.2% for the first 6 months. This is a year-to-date number. But last month actually dropped quite a bit. Now, I want to be clear though. These are raw data. The number that I show at the state level, those numbers are what we call the seasonally adjusted annualized number. Those are just fancy words of saying, well, we have more business days last year than this year. And because we have fewer days this year compared to last year, and that affects the total number of sales. But if you look at the first 6 months, we're still down. At least for LA. Orange County, some of you probably have done Orange County. You notice that Orange County seems to be actually doing a little bit better. 4.7% increase in terms of sales. The other counties, other than Riverside, for San Bernardino, San Diego, and Ventura, they're pretty flat compared to last year for the first 6 months. I do believe the next 6 months or the last half of the year, second half of the year, it's going to get better, and I'll tell you why it's going to get better. As far as price is concerned, countywide, it's safe to say we have been increasing quite a bit. For LA County, close to 7% in terms of the median price. Again, has a little bit to do with price appreciation. The other part of it has to do with mix of sales change. I think I mentioned before, but I want to repeat it. Mix of sales change usually account for maybe about 40% of the change in the median price. That means the other 40 to 60%, those are actual price appreciation. So if we have, let's say, an 8% increase in median price, safe to say the price appreciation makes probably about 4%, which is actually a little bit below the norm. The historical norm is about 6%. Now let's take a look at new active listings also. New active listings also increased. So we are seeing some increase in terms of supply. 6 or 7, maybe even 12% for LA. I'm going to quickly go over some of these individual city slides. Some of you probably have already been using some of our slides. It's on the Industry 360 market data page. We have individual handout for individual cities. I'm showing first the month of June, and then I'm going to show the 6-month number after I show a few cities. I have Beverly Hills, Culver City, and LA, but you can find some of the other cities on the CR website at that location that I mentioned earlier, and I'll repeat it afterward. You can see, as far as Beverly Hills is concerned, we are seeing an increase in price, but as far as sales is concerned, for the month of June, it actually dropped about 10%. Supply actually increased by 32%, and take a look at the sales to list price ratio. It actually dipped about 6%. I think people were discounting a little bit because of the increase, because of interest rate increase. As far as Culver City is concerned, June, again, was a bad month, partly because of interest rates, partly because of fewer days and business days compared to last year. And Culver City actually dropped in supply. They also have a dip in sales to list price ratio. And as far as LA is concerned, we also dip about 9% for the county as a whole, or for the city, sorry. Supply actually increased by about 41%, And the sales to list price ratio is actually pretty flat compared to the sales price compared to the list price. Now, this is the 6 months. This might be a little bit more insightful. For the first 6 months, Beverly Hills actually increased about 6%. Remember what I said earlier? The higher price, higher end market seems to be actually doing a little bit better. It actually increased. But take a look at also the sales to list price ratio. It continued to actually show that sellers may be actually willing to compromise a little bit.
Is this Beverly Hills proper or Beverly Hills post office?
I have to double check.
It's just a ULA difference.
I have to double check, but I want to say that Beverly Hills proper, but I'll check and let you know. Culver City is pretty flat compared to for the first 6 months compared to the last 6 months. And their sales to list price ratio also is pretty flat, just a little bit down compared to compared to the sales price compared to the list price. And here's LA, 1.2% increase compared to the first 6 months of last year. Now, let's talk for the next, hopefully I have 10 minutes or so, about what we can expect for the following months and maybe in 2025 as well. When you want to find out, what the market is going to be like, you want to see how buyers and sellers have been thinking. Now, if you look at this dotted line right here, I think I showed last time. Consumers today believe it's a good time to buy. Now, if consumers believe it's a good time to buy, it's either because they think, well, prices are actually decent, it's probably not going to come down, or they think rates are actually going to improve. Usually about that. Of course, they also could have won a lottery. Now, if you take a look at good time to buy, it has been fluctuating. We have better times. 22% believe it's a good time to buy back in maybe about a year ago. Started coming down to 17%. A few months ago, it was 20%. It dropped in May to 14% because interest rate actually went up quite a bit. Actually bounced back in June. Now, we don't have July number yet. I think it might actually come out either today or maybe tomorrow. This is a national number. So even with tomorrow's number, it may not show a significant increase because it was before the Federal Reserve announcement and also before that labor market report. But in August, it's possible that number could actually increase a bit more. And there's a reason why that is the case. There's also and I'll show you in the next slide or so, there's also a slide from the same survey that talks about whether consumers believe that rates are actually going to come down. Again, focus on the blue line right here. The number of the respondents who believe rates will come down actually registered at 24%. At one point, it was 31% at the end of last year. So because rates actually started coming up in the last couple months or so, people did not think it's going to come down very soon. But again, I think in August, not so much July, in August, we probably will see that number start coming down. And the reason why that is the case, I just captured these numbers yesterday or last night. Take a look at this right here. We have the Freddie Mac's number, and then we have the Mortgage News Daily number. The Mortgage News Daily number, look at the 30-year fixed rate on a daily basis. Take a look at what happened. I think this is somewhere around beginning of July. Take a look at what happened since the beginning of July to maybe yesterday or the day before that. What is the interest for the 30-year fixed rate right now? 6.3. A month ago, it was probably somewhere around 6.8, 6.9. So what happened in the last couple of days? Last few days, I'm going to blow this up a little bit. This is what happened. On July 29th, just about a week ago, we were at 6.8. If you look at the 30-year fixed rate from Mortgage News Daily. That was the day before the Fed announcement. Actually, 2 days before the Fed announcement. It was at around 680. Didn't really change much. the Federal Reserve made an announcement on the 31st saying that, well, we'll probably keep rate and change, we'll keep the rate and change this time. Next time, which is 6 weeks from now, there's a possibility that we will lower rate. The language was encouraging. It actually dropped 30-year fixed rate by 10 basis points. The day after that, on Thursday, it dropped a little bit more by about 8 basis points, but take a look at what happened. Last Friday, it tumbled by 20 basis points from 662 to 640. What happened on Friday? I mentioned, I showed you the number earlier. There was a global stock market meltdown. People panicked because of the report that was released on the labor market. So people thought, okay, well, there's a possibility that we could actually have a recession. Now, of course, rates don't just decline by itself. It's because of what happened to the bond market. These are bond rates, 10-year Treasury bond yields. What happened when people think that there is possibly a recession? They go to safe havens assets, right? Stock market tank 15%. What are you gonna put? You're gonna pull out. You're gonna put your money somewhere else. You put your money in bonds, right? That's somewhat safe. You put your money in bonds. When bond prices go up, yields goes down. That's what happened. People pull their money out. I didn't pull my money out fast enough. So I was not the reason why bond yields actually declined. But it dropped quite significantly from 4.1 or 4.2 all the way to 3.73. Yesterday, Monday, the bond market didn't really change. I should say Monday. Monday, it didn't really change that much. But then I think at the end of the day, it started bouncing back. Or yesterday, it started bouncing back. And the reason why it started bouncing back is, remember the report that I mentioned earlier, the service sector's report that suggests that things may not be as bad. So people overreacted. I think even the stock market reacted yesterday a little bit more positively. It went back up a little bit. So rates, I think, will probably remain, will probably not go back to the 6.8. It probably will continue to fluctuate though. I think we are going to see rates compared to, let's say, a month ago, probably at around 6.5, 6.4% in the next couple of weeks or so now, until the next report comes out. There will be probably another report on retail sales. There will be a report on inflation. There will be another report on job market. All those are going to factor in. Now, the other reason also is people might believe that the Federal Reserve, because they did not adjust rates in July, yes, they probably will adjust rates in September, but will they actually adjust rate a little sooner than that? Is there a possibility? Because there has been discussions about an emergency meeting. They don't typically do that. They probably wait for a couple of days to see if things are actually going to be okay before doing anything. I personally don't think they will. There have been economists who think maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. I personally don't think they would because they don't want to stir the market a little bit. If they actually jumped the gun and said, hey, we are going to adjust it, that actually could cause a little bit of a panic in the stock market as well. There could possibly be. Now, here are the numbers that I actually got from the CME group last night on the odds of the probability of the Federal Reserve changing or making their cutting their rates in September, November, and December. Take a look at the number. The lighter green color, that's 1 week ago. The darker green color, that's yesterday. Take a look at the probability. The current level right now for the Fed funds rate, 525 to 550. Almost everyone believed that, well, not almost everyone. Everyone believed that we'll cut rate at a little bit in September, by September. 86.3% believe the target rate will actually be at 500 to 525, which means we'll be down by about 25 basis points in September. But take a look at how things might have changed. 1 week ago, about 86% believe we will be at this level. Yesterday, 72% believe we actually will be cut to 475 to 500, which means in the next meeting, a lot more people yesterday started believing that we will be actually be cutting rates by about 50 basis points. I tend to believe that could be the case. And again, what about November and what about December? 1 week ago, again, a lot of people, actually the majority of the people think, well, they might actually cut it 25 more basis point and then lead the target rate to 475 to 500. That was 1 week ago. Yesterday, 60% believe that the total number of rate cuts or number of the rate target is going to go down to 450 to 475, which means 50 basis point cut in September, 25 basis point cut in November, and by the end of the year, yesterday, people believe that we'll have about 100 basis point rate cut. So that's more encouraging compared to a week ago. Now, whether that number will stick, I'm not sure.
So in short, it's people believe that by the beginning of the year we'll be in the 5.5s for interest rate. We'll start the year off in the 5s with a full basis point reduction.
Okay, so look at it from this standpoint. Before what happened a few days ago, or a couple days ago last week, people already baked in about 50 basis points. So with those 50 basis point baked in, the market already, planned on having maybe about a rate of 6.3, 6.4, like what I showed you earlier.
Oh, okay.
So there might be another 50 basis point that was not baked in before. So it's possible that we may actually be slightly below 6. I don't want to be too aggressive. But of course, it all depends on whether the market or the stock market or the inflation numbers is going to go up. The Federal Reserve, I showed you these plot before. This is the FOMC dot plot. These are the predictions of the Federal Reserve officials. They basically put down what they believe, each one of them voted, what they believe the year-end number is going to be for the Fed funds rate, and you take the midpoint. Now, in June, that midpoint was slightly above 5%. I think it was 5.125. We won't have a number until September, but it's possible that the number by the end of the year, for their predictions in 2024, will be adjusted at least 50 basis point down. But what I want to show you here is they do expect, based on the June's chart, they do expect to cut rate even further by 100 basis point in 2025 and another 100 basis point in 2026. So we will continue to see some rate decline. Now, again, I think I reiterated last time, I don't think we will get to 3%. But it's good to get that back down to 5.5. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to skip this one. Now, there are a lot of things too. The second half of the year, I think we are going to look a little bit better, other than the fact that interest rates are going to be a little bit better. Renters, they continue to want to rent. We did a consumer survey for California, and we asked how many people actually want to own a home at some point. 80% of the renters want to own a home at some point, and it doesn't matter, what ethnic group, they all want to own a home at some point. Question is whether it's next year or, in the next couple of years or so. It comes down to, of course, how much they have saved and what the interest rates are. And based on, a national survey, a lot of people, including different generations, they want to buy at some point, but they do lack confidence in understanding home buyers program, how to finance or secure a mortgage. I think it's important, and I reiterated last time, it's important for us to go out there and help them out, because let's be honest, it's really hard sometimes to navigate through the mortgage system. And also, of course, I'm not going to get into too much about the settlement and everything. Those require a lot of, hand-holding. And of course, we need a trusted advisor, and now more than ever. And it is going to show up, the next few months or so. things are going to improve. I do believe that, and it's already showing up in some of the open escrow sales numbers. Things are actually improving, showing at least in the last open escrow number that things have improved by about 8%, which means it's going to show up in the July close sales. I haven't had a chance to look at the August or the latest open escrow numbers. It could actually increase, depends on how much mortgage applications that we're seeing. Now, at the same time, usually there is some seasonality to home prices. We started seeing list price drop to below 0% compared to last year, even after a bounce back. So there's a possibility that we may, and then the close sales price usually follow a month, 2 months later. So that means in the next couple months or so, we might actually see a slowdown in home prices because of seasonality, because of the sentiment. I show you the purchasing, the buyer sentiment. I want to show you the seller sentiment as well. Sellers, they do want to sell. Back in 2022, or back in 2021, when the interest rate were high or low, we had 77% of people said it's a good time to sell. That number dropped to 57%, but take a look at the number. It actually started coming back. I think we will see a bounce back to a higher number in the next couple months or so. Reason why people said this is based on the 2024 consumer survey collected about 3 months ago. Mortgage rates on another property would be too high. That's the number one reason. Now, if interest rates start coming down, things are going to look a little bit better. And I show you the number already. Populations continue to grow. I think that's another positive reason why we can look forward to the next few months or so. It's not going to be a sharp increase, hopefully gradually increasing in the next few months or so in terms of sales. These are the numbers that I showed earlier. We expect a 13.1% increase in sales. Price-wise, 7.4% increase in price. You probably noticed that I did not include 2025 numbers on there. The reason why, because we have Reimagine coming out. The forecast probably will be shown then. I can verbally tell you what I think. I believe the number is going to grow by another double digit. By about 10% or so. We haven't finalized those numbers. And as far as price is concerned, we actually will be up by maybe about 6% as far as the statewide median price. What about supply? Supply is probably not going to go up by as much. It is still going to go up by about 10% or so, conservatively speaking. Statewide, and certain areas might have a little bit more. Now, new home sales or builders start actually pulling back a little bit last couple months. I think they will go back in the next couple months or so, starting in about maybe August or so. Now, there are some market risks. I mentioned that last time. I'm going to repeat it. You guys already know. Tough time for people who want to buy. Many buyers may not necessarily understand that insurance costs could actually increase their home ownership cost. And now these numbers are based on 2023 numbers. We actually have a 2024 numbers, preliminary numbers that I've collected. As far as the number of people who had difficulty obtaining insurance, last year it was 17%. This year's survey, it's 30%. 30%. And as far as, I have another chart that shows last year's about 6% of the transactions fell through, didn't go through because of insurance. This year's preliminary number is 14. So it doubled. And we do expect insurance rate to continue to increase. This is a number collected from and certified, not from CAR. It showed in California in general, the projected increase in 2024 was 8%. You guys have already heard it. All states want to increase, State Farm want to increase their insurance premium, possibly by double digits. So I do believe that we probably will continue to see increase in insurance rate. I mentioned this also last time. We continue to have an issue with commercial real estate. Some of those CRE mortgages, they are actually maturing. Many of those are actually maturing this year. A big part of it. They are the same as, current homeowners who want to refinance. The only difference is CRE loan borrowers, they don't have a 30-year period. They have a 5 to 10 years. Some of them may be maturing. Many of the lenders borrowers, they're actually pushing out, the renewal date. At some point, they have to be renewed. And we are already seeing some areas, office sector for sure, and the multifamily sectors, the delinquency rate for 2024, it was originally, that was what I put out earlier this year. Delinquency rate was 8.1% for 2024 forecasted and 9.9% in 2025. Take a look at what happened in June. Now, office sector is actually somewhat in line, but take a look at multifamily. Multifamily was projected to be 1.3. It's already at 2.3 or 2.6, 2.4. Now, it's not a very, very high number, but it's higher than the projection. So keep that in mind. And I am wrapping up with the bullet point. Here are some of the things that I mentioned. Inflation, it's still easing, but that might not be the big problem that we need to focus on in the next few, or at least what the market or the financial market might be looking at. Rates, I think it's getting better. There's no doubt about it. Whether we're going to get down to 5, that's a question that we need to figure out. Sales, I mean, even if it's slightly below 6, I think that's a good start.
People will get excited.
And people start realizing, I think a year ago, people would think, well, it's still going to go back to 3. Now they realize, well, if it's 6, yeah, then they start thinking, well, things are actually getting better. Inventory will improve. Prices are going to continue to grow moderately in the next 12 months. But these are the issues we still have to continue to look at. Insurance costs, of course, we have an election coming up. I showed those election slides last time, didn't really change, so I'm not going to show them again. The CRE sector
said the elections have little impact on.
Typically, yes. And towards the end of the year, the good thing is towards the end of the year of an election year, you usually see a little bit of a tick up, both in price and sales. So hopefully that will continue.
Brands is going to see the benefit of that and take over.
Right. So it will probably have a little bit of a positive impact at the tail end, and it looks like that is going to be the case. Now, I'm going to wrap it up. We have a steps towards homeownership free class on September 5th. You feel free to sign up for it. Here's the link. We also have, I already mentioned it already, Reimagine. Reimagine is coming to Long Beach in less than 6 weeks. I'll be there. I don't know what sessions I'm going to hold. Jordan is going to, our chief economist is going to talk about the forecast. Some of you, and I don't want to promise, but I believe Leslie Apodayan is going to be there for an econ panel, I believe. She's going to talk to us probably. And of course, there will be a lot of sessions. We have a booth there too for the research and economics. Feel free to come by. And these are some of the sessions Jordan is going to do the forecast. And with that, I am going to turn it back, or actually open up for a Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any questions you guys want to ask? I know it's a lot to absorb.
And my email is there too, if you have any questions.
Oscar, we'll send out the presentation so everybody can kind of digest it at your own pace. I know it's a lot of information. I know it's information that maybe most of us or some of us are not built to absorb, but this is the underpinning of your business reality, right? Whether you absorb a little or a lot, you really need to. This is what moves the interest rate. This is what moves your clients to purchase or to not sell. These are the numbers behind the emotions, right?
and the actions. So really, really thank you. Pick out a few nuggets and start using them with your clients and friends and everyone you know, because it will come in handy.
Yes, it will, and then of course, as Joey said, I put out a lot of information here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we always do like sound bites and weekly stuff. The sound bites, those are, look for the real estate short videos that we put out every now and then. It's just a 1-minute video, and then every Monday we release something called a weekly market snapshot. It's a 1-pager or so that sum up what happened the past week, whether it be in the market or the economy. Like, for example, the Federal Reserve stuff, mortgage rates, fluctuations. Those are things that you can actually grab. Usually we have 5 bullet points in there.
Great to send out your clients for touches.
Right.
Things like
So take a look at those.
Yeah, I think I say this all the time. Out of all of the professional organizations that we belong to or we have to belong to, I believe that CAR is the best resource and probably the most bang for your buck in any of those, right? Between zip forms and the hotline and all of the collateral materials and information that you guys supply. I really think it's that they service the agent in a very, very thoughtful and substantial way.
We try our best.
NAR, on the other hand, and the local board, I have issues, but I'll get over that, But the car actually serves it up.
Is that a weekly thing that you're talking about? Is that an email list we sign up for, or is that something you just search for?
It's something on our website, and then you can actually download as a 1-pager. It's called the weekly market snapshot. If you go to Industry 360, you see market data. And there's something called, the weekly market minutes or market snapshot or something like that. I can't remember the exact name.
Get in there and play with it. Again, Reimagine's coming up. I was on a panel last year for the first time. Tell Sarah I said hi.
Will do.
Any way I can help. Thank you guys. So go out there and make some magic, right? Please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Thanks. All right. Jeff, you go? You good?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is not.